You bear the mark of his corruption. And so the demon's blood within you will be your prison.
Hello everyone. I got a kind comment on my last video suggesting that I made Maiev Shadowsong from the Warcraft universe. So that's what I'll be doing in this video. I started out by drawing up the proportions that I wanted and formed a metal skeleton to match them. I added foil and then a thin layer of clay that covered the entire sculpture. The idea was to harden this very rough figure to have a base to work from. I also attached it to a base made of clay so it could stand by itself. Then I made some cuts and bumps here and there to make the clay I would later attach on top stick to it more easily. I realized that this step looks like a voodoo doctor being very mad at someone. After hardening, I started adding more clay and worked towards a human-like figure. When I was happy with the shape, I started to successively add the armor, starting with the gloves and the belt. Then I moved on to the other parts of the armor. After looking at a lot of different art as reference for this sculpture, they varied a lot in the way her helm was formed. Some were more open, exposing the bottom part of her face, and some were totally closed. At this point I was unsure how I would shape it, but eventually I decided to close it up to give her the badass look of the in-game model. I used a net from a broken stainer as the armature for the cape. I cut it to the shape I wanted and formed it to look, well, like a cape. Before adding any clay to it, I decided to finish up the base sculpture. I added some texture to the armor and wrinkle to the cloth parts. After that I remade her hands, since I was not entirely happy with them. Hands are always a challenge, but I think it adds a lot to a sculpture if you put a lot of effort into them. I used a sharp tool to make the furry parts of her gloves. I knew that the boots and cape required the same look of fur, so this was a good opportunity to find out what I would have to do to make it look good. The final step before hardening the sculpture was to add the engravings to her armor and also give it some battle damage in the form of scratches and dents. Then I moved back to making the cape. After I formed the net to the shape that I wanted, I rolled out big sheets of clay and covered it with them. I started adding the furry edge of the cape, and then used the same technique as for the gloves and boots to give it the same fur-like texture. Before adding the shoulder pads on top of the cape, I hardened it. After adding the final details to the shoulder pads, I hardened them together with the cape as one piece. The only parts left at this point were the ground and her ponytail. To give the ground some diversity, I removed one of the rocks and replaced it with a murky tree stump. I made the ponytail with metal wire as the armature and added clay to it. To affix the ponytail, I left a small piece of metal wire sticking out of it and attached it to a hole in her head. Time for painting. The main colors I used were white, yellow, green, brown and black. I used ordinary acrylic paint and a variety of brushes. I used thin layers of paint for the bigger areas, like the armor and the cape, and thicker paint for the more detailed parts. I added shadows and highlights and some details like dirt on her cape and ground textures to finish it off. Overall, I'm happy with how the sculpture turned out. Please tell me what you think in the comments or suggest what I can make next. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.